With the new input system, we still have this issue where we can currently fly off into infinity. Eventually, you'd hit some kind of floating point precision issue, but long before that, the game would become unplayable and, more importantly, quite boring. For this type of game, we're going to want a fixed camera and some boundary walls, some invisible walls. The camera we have is currently attached to the pawn, and for a shoot 'em up, a level camera would just make more sense. So if we go back into the BP_pawn base, we can grab the spring arm, control select the camera, and we'll just delete these. If we press play, we're now back inside of the ship, so we have that problem back, but we're about to fix that pretty much straight away. The main thing is that you're now aware of the gameplay framework and you know why we are looking at the inside of our ship. If not, then go back a few topics. If we go back into the main level, we just want to add a camera. To the top, just above the viewport, there's a small cube, which is our add button. If we drop this down, we want to search for the option camera. Many of the options here tend to move categories every few Unreal versions, so searching can be a little bit faster because life's just too short to be looking for cameras. The one that we want is our camera actor. This will be dropped directly into the world if we select this. The camera is going to need to look at where the player will be spawning, and we already know, again, from the gameplay framework, how we're managing that and where that's going to be. So a nice quick shortcut here for you. If you grab the player start, which is where the player spawns, we're going to go to the details panel on the right-hand side, right-click on the location property, and we can copy the actual location of the player start. If we grab the camera, we'll do the same thing, but we're going to right-click here, and we're going to paste the property that we've just provided. So we now have the camera directly at the point of the player start. We also want to give this some rotation, so inside of the viewport, we can press F to focus in on the camera. If you wanted, you can go into rotation mode, and you can use the widgets just here. Now I know for our needs, we just want to rotate the camera minus 90 degrees on the y-axis. So I'll do this from the details panel, and we're now looking directly at the floor. This may be a little bit too close, so the next thing we're going to want to do is move the camera up in the z-axis. So again, if we grab the z value here, I'll place a value of 2400. I think this is similar to what we had previously. We can see now we're going to be looking directly down at the player start and where the plane will be spawning. You may now be tempted to press play and see what happens. The reason being, quite simply, what if we had 5, 7, 20 cameras in the scene? How would it know which one to pick? Like with the other rules that we're setting, we want to be in control of this and set this manually. So with the camera actor selected, we just want to search in this panel just here, in the details panel. We want to search for something called auto player activation. We can see we have this option here. Auto activate for player is currently set to disable. If we drop this down and select player 0, this will be the first and only player in our single player game. So now the framework knows to use the camera that we've just selected. If we press play, we can see that. We'll need to do some adjustment to get everything centered properly, but we're now looking roughly where we want to be. So with the camera placement, we're going to want the player to be closer to the bottom of the screen, kind of like Space Invaders, and again, somewhat recreating the setup in the content examples that we're going from. The problem with the editor and usability here is that the player start doesn't have any visualization, so it'll be a little bit difficult to see where the player ship's going to actually be spawning and position the camera accordingly. So a quick trick here that I wanted to introduce. We can add a temporary sphere or shape, something like that, to show where the player start is. If we go to the add button up here, we can go to our shapes option. I know that I still have the location stored from the player start earlier when I copied that. I'll undo the search for auto player here, right click and paste the location of the player start in here. So we're now looking at this sphere, which is directly on the player start. If we grab the camera actor again, this has helped because we can now see exactly what the camera will be looking at. Pressing F, I'll snap back up to look exactly at the camera, and we can then drag this into place. So if we bring the camera forward, or we could bring the player start forward, either one will be perfectly fine. The main thing is that we want the player ship to be roughly down here. So that's a nice easy way to get things in position nice and quickly. If I grab the sphere, I can delete this. Obviously we don't want that to stay in the level. We can press play, and the player's closer to where we wanted it to be. Another tip with the camera that I just wanted to show very quickly is if we grab the camera again, whilst you're playing around with things, if you didn't want this demonstration window to automatically toggle off when you select something else, we can choose this little pin icon down here, and that will pin this window to your viewport. So if you needed to come in, move the player start to something around to see what's happening through the view of the camera, another quick tip there that we can keep this on screen temporarily. When you want this to go away, we can just press the pin again, and that will unpin from the viewport. And just a couple of things to begin getting comfortable with and familiar with. I'll grab another shape just here. I think I've mentioned it a couple of times, but if you press F with an object selected, you'll focus in on the object you want to look at. We can alt-click to then rotate directly around the object. And another thing which can be quite useful is if we're placing something like this, we can hold Shift, left-click on a widget direction, and then drag this. So if we begin dragging an object here, and then press Shift whilst it's moving, we can actually have the camera in the viewport keep tracking the object that we're moving. So quite handy if you're trying to place something and you didn't want to keep moving it, moving the camera, moving it again, and so on. So just some quick tips there, getting familiar with the viewport. Now we're going to want to begin looking at the boundaries. Once again, from the Add button, we're going to search for something here called a blocking volume. We can see here we have the option for blocking volume. We'll select that one, and what we get given is this invisible cube. This is going to represent our invisible wall, and we just want to lay this out across the level to block where the player or the enemies may hit. To get this in place, I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to right-click and paste the location of the player start. That will put us down here. For this one, we can put this on the left side of our play zone, which I know from testing would be a good spot of negative 1,240. That will place this just over here. We're already perfectly fine on the z-axis. This is high enough that the plane will indeed collide with this. If we put this at the x location of 0, that will put this kind of middle of the level on the forward axis. And then what we want to do here is scale the box to cover the entire extent. Now, one way that you could do this is to make the x-axis here much longer. That will change the box. That is kind of stretching the actual actor. When we're working with things like volumes, we have another option. So I'm going to set this back to 1. And the ideal way that we'll be working with these is actually changing the brush settings here. So this is the size of the box that we currently have at the moment, which is 200 centimeters around. So if we set this to something much larger instead, I'll just add a couple of zeros here. So we'll have a 20,000 unit box just to ensure that we're encapsulating the entire play zone and a little bit more, probably a lot more. But that's perfectly fine. The reason that we want to do this is that this is changing the scale of the actual component inside, this brush box component. Whereas this value up here is the scale of the actual entire actor. So if we can keep this uniform and clean at 1, then if we ever needed to check things in code, it's a little bit easier to work with, and again, just keeps our structure a little bit tidier. Whilst we're down here, I'll just make the height a little bit bigger as well. So we may want to set this to something like 1000 on the Z, just to make sure that we're definitely blocking absolutely everything. Something else that may get a little bit confusing is if it's a little bit hard to see, we do have options here to change the opacity. We can add a display shaded volume, and then we can start seeing where the actual cube is. Again, this doesn't show in game mode, but it does show through the camera, which makes it a little bit easier to see. And the main thing is being able to gauge where the blocking volume will actually occur. With that done, I'm just going to press Ctrl and D after selecting the blocking volume we've set up. I'll set this to 1240, so we have this on the right side of the playfield, so on the y-axis here. And just to make it visible like the left side bound, I'm just going to scroll back down, turn on the display shaded volume, and these will both now look the same. Do be aware as well, I think when we duplicate things, Unreal tries to move the duplicated actor several units either way so they're not fully overlapping. So you can see that on the right side volume, we have some offsets on the X. This actually wouldn't cause a problem, but just to soothe the voices in my brain, I'm going to set this back to 0 and everything again, nice and tidy and well maintained. With a number of changes like that made, you may want to press Ctrl, Shift and S to save everything that we've been working on. So now we can go into play mode. We're going to be looking through our camera. It's going to be a little bit difficult to see because we can't see the actual bounding volume here. So if we did want to test things and make sure we know exactly when we might be going through a wall, another option, a little bit lengthy here, is we could go back into shapes. We could add a cube. We want to go down to the collision settings in the details panel on the right-hand side. And just to ensure that we're only going to be checking against our blocking volume, we can select the collision preset just here and turn this to no collision. We'll look more at collision a little bit later, but this is just to get something visual. Then again, I'm going to go back to details, paste this in the location, and put this at minus 1240. For speed and simplicity, I'll just keep this roughly the same size. It doesn't need to be exact. So we're going to grab the cube. On the y-axis, we need to make this 2 units on the y to get roughly the size of our blocking volume. And again, we'll make this a lot larger on the x so that it spans everything, and larger again on the z. We don't need to be quite so careful here. The main thing is just something visual so we can see if and when the player would be going through the wall. So we can see that here. The main reason is that I knew that the collision wouldn't be working, and I just wanted to immediately eliminate the fact that we are indeed going through the bounding area, which should be colliding with us. The reason I wanted to introduce this, as I knew this was going to happen, this gives us a bit of an example on how we may go about debugging. This is really important in development, actually understanding how to problem solve, work things back, and find out what's going on. So we've already kind of answered one of the problems. The first thing is that we wouldn't have known if we're just flying around whether we had actually gone through the wall or not. So we've already discarded the fact that we're not reaching the wall. We can get to the point of the wall and go further, and no collision is happening. So that's one option from the checklist completely ticked off. If I grab the blocking volume on the left here, we'll try and fix this one first. The first suspect might be the collision properties that I've just shown you. So on the right-hand side in the details panel, we'll go back down into the collision properties. Under collision, we can see that this preset is set to invisible wall. If we drop this down, we can have a look at what this means. And this is going to be a very brief overview of collision. Again, there will be much more depth on this coming in future topics. But for now, all we need to know, we have 3 different types. We have ignore, overlap, and block. Ignore does what you would think. It ignores all other colliders and interaction. Overlap is looking for 2 things which are in the same physical space, but not physically touching, with things like physics and blocking each other. And then we have block, which would be 2 physical objects impacting each other, and trying to push each other away so that they don't inhabit the same physical space. In short, invisible wall is set up exactly as we want it. It's set to block absolutely everything in the world. So that's our second suspect out of the way. We know that we're reaching the wall, and we know that the wall has collision. The next thing is we're going to look at the pawn's collision. So if we go into the pawn class, we'll go to the static mesh, and the collision at the moment is being handled on the static mesh. So in the details panel, again, we're going to want to scroll down and find the collision. We'll drop down the collision presets, and we can see that this is set to block all dynamic. Now this actually doesn't matter. Again, the important thing are these tick boxes here. This is ticked to block absolutely everything as well. And if we go back into the world very quickly, we'll get a very quick crash course on collision here. We can see that the invisible wall is set to be, its object type is set to world static. The pawn itself is set to world dynamic. So this is looking to block world static objects, and this is looking to block world dynamic objects. So as long as those two are looking to interact, we should see some physical blocking. So that's the third suspect out of the way. The pawn collision is actually set up correctly. And that really leaves the only thing is that we've probably done something wrong in our code. And spoiler alert, I already know that's the problem. So if we go down into the event graph on the event tick, we're going to move over to our set actor location function here. And this is one of those things where it would be quite difficult to debug back and actually know this is the issue without already having experienced this. Two things to look out for here are the sweep and the teleport booleans on the function call. If we hover over the sweep, we can see here the description that we get is whether we sweep the destination location, triggering overlaps along the way. This is really important. Also controlling whether we stop short of the target if something is blocked by something. And this is the real important part here, is that if we don't have this ticked enabled, then we won't be checking for having our position blocked, which means we're not going to hit anything. In short, having sweep unticked is technically kind of teleporting us to the location that we want to be. So if we tick this on, hit compile and save, we'll go back and test again. We can now see when we've flown over, we're now being blocked. So we haven't needed to change any of the collision presets. We'll get into those a little bit later. That means as well that the wall on the right-hand side will be working because it's set up in exactly the same way. So that's perfectly fine. It was just a really simple thing, very easy to overlook in our code. So I wanted to include that just because, like I've mentioned, things don't always go perfectly, and you do need to be comfortable just somewhat debugging and trying to work back through the things that you logically think could be part of the problem. And this is one of those things that ends up being a really common gotcha. It's really easy to miss, really hard to debug if you don't know what you're looking for. But had that failed, even myself as an experienced developer, I would have been kind of out of potential thought paths I could have gone through, and I would have had to have just gone over to Google or Reddit or something like that and tried finding there if anyone's had a similar issue. So just a quick tidy up with the boundaries now. I'm just going to go back in. I'm going to get rid of this white cube here. That was just for visualization. We now know that we are spawning in the right place, and we're getting blocked by both of the walls over here. So with that done, the camera is fixed, it's now in place where we want it, the boundaries are set, and when we begin adding enemies, they'll detect the walls and bounce between them, obviously once we've implemented that code. Before that though, we're going to start looking at materials, the more kind of visual elements of our project. We'll be able to customize the look of our ships so that all of the enemies don't look identical to the player. As always, if you wanted to experiment, at the moment just try something simple. Try adding a top and bottom boundary, especially if you already have some forward and backwards movement. Once again, same process, different axes, just to get you familiar and trying out different things. Big thank you to all of my Patreon supporters as usual. If you've considered supporting the channel, have a look through the tier rewards available. One of those is the project you can see in the background, that fully implemented SHMUP project. It could act as a template, learning resource. You could pull features directly from it. Everything is commented and structured in a way to really emphasize good project structure, clean code, and reusable systems. Even the menu system you can see working here has been created to be mostly drag and drop. There are no hard references, so you could take this into any project.